The truth is out there, somewhere, but not on Channel 10.
And does Microsoft's Band 2 make any sense in a market awash with wearables? Welcome to Vertical Hold, the tech show where we channel surf through the headlines in search of the big picture. I'm Alex Kidman, and I'm here with a man who cannot confirm or deny that he's writing the script for Blade Runner 2, Adam Turner. We're joined by special guest, Macworld Australia editor Anthony Caruana. Anthony, welcome to the show.
Hey guys, how you doing?
Adam, what's new in tech?
Apple's Safari web browser is crashing for Mac and iGadget users around the world, seemingly due to a flaw with Apple's search suggestion features. Searching from the address bar causes the browser to crash, but the problem can be rectified by disabling the Safari suggestions option in the Safari settings. This is a separate bug to the flaw exploited by the crashsafari.com site to crash iPhones.
Apple's iPhone is still the best-selling mobile phone handset in Australia, although the overall market leader in operating system terms is Android, with 53.5% of the total handset sales for the last quarter of 2015. iOS only accounts for 39.6% comparatively, while Windows Phone market share has declined rapidly from 9.2% in the same quarter in 2014 to just 6.3% in 2015.
Channel 9 is the latest Australian TV network to live stream its channels, as it rebrands its catch-up service from Jump In to 9 Now. For now, 9's only streaming its primary channel, with plans to add Gem, Go and Life further down the track. 9 will not be able to simulcast all high-profile sporting events due to existing online rights deals, but an exact list of affected sports isn't yet available.
The top, and by top we mean worst, passwords of 2015 have been revealed, and as usual they're depressingly stupid reading, with variants on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and their ilk amongst the most favoured, as was new entrant Star Wars. At the same time, it's been revealed that a file-sharing utility provided by Lenovo for Windows laptops and Android handsets had multiple security flaws, including an easy-to-guess default SSID password, which was predictably 12345678. Apple Safari browser has picked up an all-new, all-exciting crash bug. Anthony, should Apple users be snapping each other's heads open and feasting on the goo within?
Well, that might be a fairly extreme reaction to what's going on, but it's certainly pretty frustrating. I got hit with this one last night, seemingly out of the blue. I was just browsing some stuff on my phone, and all of a sudden, crash as soon as I went to add another tab by clicking into the address bar. So it's a pretty frustrating one. I mean, the good news is there's a reasonably easy workaround for it, which is to turn off the Safari suggestions in Safari settings. But how this kind of stuff gets through quality control at Apple HQ, it's a bit of a mystery, and certainly as the editor of Macworld in Australia, I get a lot of emails from readers who complain about the increased bugginess of software, or at least their perceived view that there's increased bugginess in the software coming from Apple.
Yeah, I guess perception's a big part of the problem here. I mean, I've got to say, I've not hit it, but I'm not a heavy Safari user. And it's not entirely universal. It's not absolutely every single user. And at the same time, it's kind of frustrating when you're dealing with a company like Apple who tends to pride itself on the quality of its code, that you get bugs like this actually happening.
Yeah, I got hit by this bug as well. It was actually quite odd. I was sitting on the couch watching Mr. Robot, as it happened to be, and my phone started crashing. I thought, okay, that's odd. My wife was out at the time. She got home an hour or so later, by which time I watched 3 episodes of Mr. Robot in a row, and she said that her phone started crashing at the exact same time. So I'm like, right, that's it. We've been hacked. We're going to have to drill holes in every hard drive and burn the house down. But yeah, a little bit of research turned out it's not just us.
I guess the other thing here is Apple doesn't have the best track record when it comes to actually fixing or even admitting things.
They are terrible. They are appalling at admitting that anything is ever wrong. Oh, yeah, you're holding it wrong.
There's nothing wrong
it's
with
the
it.
users. The users must be wrong.
It's to do with the fact that you're actually clicking on it. Yeah, you're using it wrong.
So, Adam, The X-Files has re-debuted as a new special event series, except here in Australia. What's going on?
Yeah, the truth is out there, but it's going to be out there for an extra week for Australians because we're a week behind the US for no good reason other than I think Channel 10 wants to hold it over to put it up against the Australian Open final. Now, that's
one heck of an international dateline.
It is. Now, there's no excuse for this kind of stuff these days. It screens on Sunday night in the US. It's actually the same kind of time slot that Game of Thrones will screen later in the year. So that's Monday lunchtime here. So they should be able to screen it Monday night. So that's roughly a 6-hour delay. Most people would say, okay, that's reasonable because you can't expect Channel 10 to put it on at 11 o'clock in the morning. But they're holding it over an entire week. What's particularly frustrating is that they're not even making an effort to make it available to people other ways. Because they had this situation a couple of years ago with Homeland. And what they did is they would make Homeland available online. Channel 10 would put Homeland online 15 minutes after it started screening in the US. So Australians who wanted to see it and didn't want to wait until Channel 10 showed it had a legit way to watch it on Template. They're not doing that with the X-Files. Now, this is a show that was always going to be stolen by people. The generation like me that grew up on this show was the generation that turned to BitTorrent because we got screwed around by TV networks. I don't think that many people are going to wait a week to watch it. Anthony, are you an X-Files man?
Look, I watched a few episodes back in the day. I kind of find that these sorts of series tend to become quite soap opera-y after a while, and they sort of become a bit formulaic in their own way. But look, this thing where people in Australia or TV networks in Australia seem to think that 12 or 15,000 kilometres of distance makes us immune to being able to access content whenever we feel like it. These are clearly TV executives that grew up in the 1970s and were from the time where they could decide what we watched and when we watched it.
I will give you that, actually, having seen the first episode, because it just magically appeared in my lounge room. It's not that great. I will confess that. But you shouldn't have to wait a week to find that out. You really think that they, as you say, they would have learnt their lesson by now on this stuff?
Here's a devil's advocate question, and I don't know that this is the case, and I don't know that it's not. Do we know enough about the rights surrounding it? I could certainly see if I was... it's Fox in the States, I presume. I'll also put my hand up and say I'm not an X-Files kind of guy. But do we know what Fox charges for it? Are they going to charge Channel 10 a mozza more to have it simultaneous or within 15 minutes, as opposed to just picking up the rights?
Well, Homeland wasn't made by Fox, but Homeland and X-Files both came through 20th Television, which is a branch of 20th Century Fox. So it has come through the same way. But even if they couldn't get those rights, they didn't have to hold it out the extra week. They could have shown it on the Sunday night, or they could show a double episode to try and get back into sync. There are ways to do this. They make all these promises about fast tracking. They say, oh, we're going to fast track a show. And then they do it for 2 weeks and they don't care, or as soon as it doesn't suit them, they stop. So they talk the talk, but when it comes time to delivering...
The attention span of Australian free-to-air television is notoriously low.
Yeah,
I'm still fuming at what Channel 7 did with the Muppets in this regard as well.
Okay, you're a bigger Muppets fan than me, so you better bring us up to speed. What happened there?
So Channel 7 had the right for the Muppets. They were showing the promos, and they sat on it. This is the new
Muppets, I
This is the new Muppets, yeah. And they sat on it for literally for months. Yeah. Now, again, it was out there if you knew where to look, obviously. But they sat on it for months, and then over the Christmas period, they showed exactly 2 episodes, and that's it. There is no sign of them returning it whatsoever for seemingly no reason. They've dumped it in the dead summer schedule and just decided, nah, not going forward with this. But because they hold the rights, no one else is showing it either. And it is fairly arrogant and annoying behaviour. And that one annoys me far more than the X-Files, because I have more of an attachment to the Muppets than I do Mully and Skelder.
Nine did something similar with Gotham. They got halfway through it and it just disappeared.
Can I just say, you guys are complaining over having to wait days or weeks for a TV series. Spare a thought for the folks who watch Days of Our Lives and The Young and the Restless, who get 3 or 4 years behind at a time and have to have a 1-hour catch-up episode every decade to catch up 2 years of the show.
Yeah, but I mean, that's just the same plot recycled endlessly over the decades.
You could argue the X-Files was the same. So, Alex, Microsoft Band 2. Apparently this isn't the sequel to Guitar Hero. What are we talking about here?
Okay, so the Band 2 is the sequel to the Band. There's a shock marketing move. And the original Microsoft Band was never actually released in Australia. The Band 2 itself has just gone on wide retail availability. When Microsoft launched their Sydney flagship store back in November, the only place you could buy it was physically in store, which led to a lot of supposition about exactly how much stock they must have had at that point. They've now taken it so you can get it at JB Hi-Fi and selected Rebel sports stores, and they'll sell it to you online as well for $349, which is sharp for a fitness wearable, mid-range for a smartwatch, and it occupies this interesting middle space because it's a fitness band. It actually does the full kind of notifications thing that you might want out of a smartwatch, and nobody's yet really come up with a killer app for a smartwatch that isn't a notification so far, as well as a bunch of tracking of fitness metrics, so your usual running and similar activities, as well as a lot of specific stuff around golf because it's got inbuilt GPS. It's also got an inbuilt UV sensor, which is kind of a neat little feature. So it occupies that kind of middle ground, but at a price point that is still kind of a little bit on the steep side.
It looked big and ugly too from the pictures that I saw of it.
It's chunky for a band and small for a watch. As I say, it's still in that weird middle phase. But yeah, I'm not going to argue that this is a pretty thing. It's a utilitarian thing, and that kind of stylish design, which a lot of bands are going in for now, is not something that Microsoft's gone for with this particular iteration. Maybe next time round. Anthony, you're a big fan of general fitness wearables. Does the concept of a Microsoft-controlled fitness band get you running?
To be brutal, the thing that it brings to the table that most of the other fitness bands don't have is the GPS, which makes it a viable option for taking out if you're going to go running. The Apple Watch is pretty, but kind of useless for serious runners because it doesn't have a GPS, so there's no way to really track your distance accurately. And certainly in my own...
And a lot of the bands are not great for running as well on the Apple Watch. Unless you've got that elastomer band, it's not very good. Sorry, do go on.
And my experience of running with a Apple Watch is that it can be out by as much as 10 or 12%, which on a 5K run is kind of neither here nor there, but on a 25K run is quite significant, particularly if you're running for specific times and you're trying to work some particular splits into your run and that sort of stuff. So that's pretty significant. I got to say, you talked about the marketing for a moment there, Adam, and you talked about the marketing genius behind calling it Band 2. I like the marketing genius on the website for the band at the moment, which says Eric Schmidt is currently changing his life, and I wonder if it's a coincidence that they've picked the name of a person who is very, very similar to the name of one of the senior executives at Google, although it is not the senior executive Eric Schmidt from Google who's on their front page because they've spelt the surname slightly differently. But
I'm sure they never even considered the vaguest possibility.
Total coincidence.
Of confusion. Total coincidence.
I think that's actually pretty funny that they've picked Eric Schmidt as one of their case study users on the website for the Microsoft Band 2. Fitness wearables is an incredibly congested market at the moment. I think if I'm looking at it objectively, I think the Apple Watch is a smartwatch that does some fitness stuff, and obviously the Apple fanboys will dive all over it and love it. I think in terms of fitness wearables and which company's got the balance of features and options, Fitbit's got a number of different devices, and I think that their new Blaze watch is an interesting move into that space for them. So I think for people that want to have a smartwatch some of the time that does some tracking, I think they'll look at a Blaze, which is actually going to be probably $20 or $30 cheaper than a Microsoft Band and look like a decent watch. And then if they just want a plain tracker, they've got some options with a Fitbit Flex or a Charge or a Charge HR. And then they've got the Surge for people who want a bit more of a sports watch for when they go running or cycling or whatever. You've got one at the moment, one of the Band 2s at the moment, Alex. Is it waterproof?
It's not fully waterproof. You can't swim with it. It's water resistant. And I find that the watch band comparison I find really, really interesting. And this is partially because of my own OCD tendencies. I've been testing it out now for a bit over a week, and I tend to wear a fitness tracker, typically a Jawbone Up, just because I've got a lot of friends in that community and that competitive aspect appeals to me, on my right hand, but I will always wear a watch on my left hand, and that's total OCD stuff. And these days that tends to mean that I'm wearing a smartwatch and a fitness band. And within that kind of context, the Band 2 actually does a pretty decent job of what it does. And I think it's also got a bit of appeal in its space, given that Microsoft haven't just nailed it down and said, right, well, this is the band for if you're a Windows Phone user, because in Australia that's like 6% of the market. It's tiny. It's not statistically relevant. Sorry to the Windows Phone users out there, but that's basically the
Both
truth.
of them could have a
But
ban.
because the Band 2 works across iOS, works across Android, you drop two features, one of which is not super vital, which is the ability to compose text message replies on its tiny screen, which frankly is it's a fiddly feature at best. The other is the Cortana voice assistant, which genuinely could be quite useful. But that aside, everything else it'll do across those operating systems. So there's some appeal there, I think, as well. But you're right, it's a massively, massively congested space. And certainly if all you want is basic fitness tracking, you can do that a lot cheaper than this does this. Well, that just about wraps it up for another episode of Vertical Hold. Thanks to Anthony for joining the show.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Remember, if you've got any comments, hit us up in the comments section on YouTube, via Twitter, or the Facebook Vertical Hold page.
Thanks for joining us. And remember, if you like what you hear, hit that subscribe button.